A park is also named in honor of Mitch Lundgaard, and today construction work continues on the first phase, which includes a firefighter theme. Jason Zimmerman continues our team coverage with an update on the park's progress. He's live in Appleton. Jason.
Brittany, the park is right next to the fire station that Mitch Lundgaard once worked at here on Lightning Drive, and today, on the 5th anniversary of his passing, it's coming visibly together. As the community continues to mourn the loss of Appleton firefighter Mitch Lundgaard 5 years after his passing, all eyes are now on a park named in his honor, being the family man Mitch was.
He was one of those individuals that was great with his kids. I mean, his boys was his life, and then he's just an incredible athlete. And you know, you could see that in that he was a coach and that he took his kids everywhere. He was a good dad.
Construction now underway on the first phase of the park, which includes playground equipment, basketball, and pickleball courts. The next phase will include a pavilion, and money for that is being raised by the Friends of the Appleton Fire Department, who set up a website to take donations.
We're in the process right now of designing for a new pavilion with restrooms. We're very optimistic that we'll be breaking ground next spring. Of course, we'll see how the bids come in, but very optimistic that will happen.
The fire department overwhelmed by the community's support as many continue to grieve the loss on this anniversary.
The community has been amazing, you know, since the word got out on May 15th of 2019 all the way till today, and I can assure you that that support will be here for decades. It feels really good because when you look at Mitch and the tragedy that happened, we want to remember him, and it fills your heart when you know that the community is remembering him with you.
The hope is to have some type of community celebration here once the first phase of construction wraps up in 2 to 3 weeks. Reporting live in Appleton, Jason Zimmerman, Action 2 News.
Jason, thanks. The Lundgaard family has encouraged people to celebrate Mitch's life with activities every single day this week. You can see remaining schedule here, including sharing a photo of Mitch tomorrow and enjoying some of his favorite food and drink on Friday.